What were your Adobe Photoshop and InDesign skills like at the beginning of the course? Well, at the beginning of the course I had not used InDesign there before, although I had used a bit of Photoshop. My skills were very basic for InDesign, as I had learned how to use the program from Rob's tutorials in the lesson he gave, and some of the tools I learned how to use them myself as I played around with the program for a bit. How far had your Adobe Photoshop and InDesign skills progressed by the time you had completed your preliminary exercise? By the time I finished my preliminary exercise, my skills weren't progressed as much as I thought I would be, because everything still looked basic and my exercise didn't look as good as I expected it to be. Therefore, I still had a lot to learn about the program and how to use the tools correctly and to achieve the best work possible for me. What lesson did you learn about the use of technologies by the time you had completed your preliminary exercise? I think near the end of the preliminary exercise I was aware of the basics of the program and was comfortable enough to be ready to advance my skills. I found using Photoshop easier than InDesign, because for Photoshop I did not need to use that as much for my preliminary exercise, and only had to use that to resize photos, although for InDesign I used that program more and there were a lot more tools which I was not familiar with. How far had your Adobe Photoshop and InDesign skills progressed by the time you had completed your main task? By the time my main task was completed, my InDesign and Photoshop skills had advanced very much since the preliminary exercise. I was much happier with the outcome of my main task than my preliminary exercise, because I had more time on my main task, and because of this I got to learn stuff about the program that I did not in the preliminary exercise. What lessons did you learn about the use of technologies by the time you had completed your main task? By the time I completed my main task, I felt very familiar with the program, managed to maintain a good use of the program, both programs, InDesign and Photoshop. I felt very comfortable to be able to try out new tools for my main task, as for my preliminary exercise I limited myself to the tools I used, as I had no experience and was not familiar with the program. What were the advantages, disadvantages of each use of technologies you have used? The advantages were the programs that we use. There were tutorials from TRC on YouTube which we could watch and learn from, so we didn't need to ask Rob always on how to use the software. It allowed us to be more independent and learn from ourselves. Another advantage was the programs were not limited and allowed me to be creative and do anything to my magazine that I wanted, whether it be the text, font, or even how I wanted the text laid out. The disadvantages, however, of these programs was I didn't have these programs at home, so I could not work on my project from home, so I had to rely on college time in media or the LLC to work on it. The programs we use sometimes crash the computer, therefore sometimes I lost bits of my work, but most of the time I backed it up every 15 or 20 minutes.